Will we see a new top weapon on offense emerge for the Denver Broncos and Bo Nix in 2025? If the Avalanche are going to stave off a first-round execution and force a Game 7, what are their keys to victory against the Dallas Stars? And our own Jake Shapiro will join us live from Los Angeles ahead of Nuggets Clippers Game 6 for a little preview action in what could be the final game of the first round. All things to come on today's rundown, but we begin in the NFL, where the Denver Broncos have now completed their free agency period and their 2025 NFL draft class. So we have a pristine picture as of now of what the team will look like. And on offense, it's looking like there's some new mouths to feed. It started with the addition of Evan Ingram in free agency, and then Trent Sherfield was also a wide receiver free agent acquisition, although he profiles more as a special teams contributor there. But then that joins an already pretty crowded wide receiver room of Cortland Sutton, Marvin Mims, Troy Franklin, Devon Vele, and new 2025 draft pick Pat Bryant out of the University of Illinois. That's just in the receiver room. We added R.J. Harvey, the UCF Golden Knight running back, who is, while maybe a little bit undersized on paper at 5'8", 205, projected at least, or expected to take on a major contribution role in the running back room as alongside Jaleel McLaughlin and Audric Estime. And then we have the usual suspects from one of the more disappointing tight end rooms in recent memory in Nate Atkins and Adam Troutman, who hopefully, with the addition of Evan Ingram and all of those that we just listed, will not have to bear as much of a burden on the pass catching side of things. So that list right there should show you there's a lot of mouths to feed on this Broncos offense. And I'm starting to wonder, with the connectivity and the receivers that are coming back, the connections and the chemistry they've built with Bo Nix already, the roles that were shifted a little bit mid-season, like Marvin Mims, who was kind of forced into a pseudo Joker type role because there was really no one else who could fit the bill for Sean Payton. Now with Evan Ingram kind of expected to be that, you could see Marvin Mims slide out to what Cecil Lammey likes to call the Riddler role, whereas he's like the outside Joker, to maybe a little bit lesser degree. Cortland Sutton's future beyond this season is still uncertain, and maybe that uncertainty could lead toward some contract negotiation pauses and holdouts and things like we saw at the beginning of last offseason, where he held himself out of the initial part of offseason workouts before a front-loaded incentive-based deal was kind of put in place to juice some money into his contract up front. But all in all, Pat Bryant and Evan Ingram and Marvin Mims are all going to look to probably see a little bit of a bump and uptick in production. I would expect another step forward from Devon Vele, and you would hope that the flashiness and the explosiveness that they saw from Troy Franklin, which is part of the reason they moved up a significant degree in the draft to select him as Bo Nix's former teammate, you would hope that things start to click there a little bit more. So if we're divvying up the pie, I think Cortland Sutton's slice of the pie has been the biggest. I think Marvin Mims took a big step from year 2 to year 3 and will take a little bit bigger of a slice of pie as well. And so as we're starting to carve out that pie chart, I would think that the third in line is where things could start to get interesting. I think it's fair that Marvin Mims is kind of slotted right now as the secondary target in that offense. But all that remains to be seen is how well does Evan Ingram as their kind of crown jewel piece offensively in free agency, given that they didn't address the tight end position in the draft. How well is he going to play at 30 years old on his third team in the NFL into the Sean Payton Joker role? Because if it fits like a glove, I think Evan Ingram's in contention to maybe be the second most targeted and or most used receiving threat in this offense in 2025, because you could tell how badly Sean wanted it and needed it for things to function. And if it fits well and things click, especially early on, I think there's a lot of production to be had there. But let's just say there's a little bit of a growing curve and it evens out to where Evan Ingram might be more of a close third option to Marvin Mims than a true secondary option. Speaking of secondary options, I think that R.J. Harvey actually could be an interesting factor in this conversation as somebody who can catch passes out of the backfield and has good burst and size to complement his speed. Let's not forget, Javonte Williams was one of the highest targeted receiving options on the team last year. And given how much Sean Payton loves the screen game, whether it's wide receiver screen or running back screen, I think RJ Harvey's production in the passing game as a receiver could be one to watch. There's been a lot of talk about Pat Bryant, and I think a lot of people saw him as an underwhelming selection or addition, given the fact that he, talks a lot about blocking, but he's a big body wide receiver. He has a pretty high contested catch rate. His radius is strong, and I think that if he's got a capable pass thrower in Bo Nix to be able to deliver the ball in space and his physical attributes kind of mirroring Courtland Sutton's, and maybe there's a foreshadowing there about Courtland Sutton's potential future, I think that Pat Bryant could be, for a third-round value, kind of a sneaky, surprising option for the Broncos in 2025. Not going to be a burner, take the top off kind of receiver, because that was one of the knocks on him going into the pre-draft process was his speed. But Sean Payton says he sees Michael Thomas in him. I'm buying neither. And so if we're talking about contested catches in the intermediate passing game, short slants like we saw Michael Thomas use so much during his tenure in New Orleans, I think Pat Bryant could surprise a lot of people. And that's just assuming that a lot of that vacuum space isn't sucked up by an emerging Devon Vele and a hopefully tracking Troy Franklin. So if I had to rank as we wrap up the Broncos segment, if I had to rank the order of targets, I think, or the production order for the Broncos in 2025, I think it's hard not to say that Courtland Sutton, as the incumbent number one, shouldn't be right there at the top again, at least in this early stages of the evaluation. At number two, I'll probably go Marvin Mims, with a close third being Evan Ingram. And then from there, I think it's a crapshoot, and it's going to be a lot of guys fighting for opportunity, and we're going to see who maximizes it and makes the most out of it. Quickly, before we bring in our special guest, we have double sixes tonight. We have a pair of game sixes taking place within 30 minutes of each other, and the Colorado Avalanche, unlike their counterpart at Ball Arena, the Denver Nuggets, they're in do or die mode. So when it comes to extending this series and forcing a game seven, where, by the way, Pete DeBoer is undefeated with the Dallas Stars in postseason game sevens. So even getting past this game doesn't necessarily provide the greatest outlook. But if the Avalanche are going to do it, I think three major things are going to happen in terms of keys to victory. One, Mackenzie Blackwood has to bounce back. He experienced his first postseason adversity really in this last game, getting pulled after two periods, which was just as much performance-based as it was kind of a conceding or a waving of the white flag to get him ready for the eventual next game and the continuation of this series. But he came out of the gates on fire in this postseason, despite having none in terms of postseason experience to his record. And I think you need that Blackwood back. I think he has the capability and the right mindset to bounce back. And if he can't, then I think the Avalanche are skating uphill from the jump, much as they were last game when they gave up a goal in the first 9 seconds and the last 47 seconds of the first period. So I think Mackenzie Blackwood is your first critical key to victory to offset the superb goaltending that Dallas is getting from Jake Ottinger for the majority of it. Because let's not forget, Mackenzie Blackwood prior to game 5 was leading the NHL in save percentage at .939, and he was second in terms of goals against, with a 16.6 expected goals against average to only allow 12 of those on 132 shots. I think he was doing just fine before he had a little bit of a dip in the radar and a bad game. The second key to victory is special teams. This, in my opinion, has been the true difference maker in the series, because the Avs have skated well for the vast majority of these periods through 5 games, but there's the little moments, the chinks in the armor and the cracks that Dallas has been able to exploit and push through to provide a difference. That's how you're leading in a series that through 4 games you were tied 2-2, despite your opponent only leading for 62 seconds of that series. Dallas, in terms of special teams, particularly on the power play, they've outshot the Avs on the power play 63-40. They've almost doubled the high danger scoring chances at 40-22. Their scoring chances at 40-22. High danger wise, it's even more of a disparity at 19-6. Shots on goal, the Dallas Stars outshoot the Avs 34-21, and power play goals, they've outscored them 4-2. So I think that for the Avalanche, you can't rely on just skating well and doing the things you've been doing. This is the thing. This has been their Achilles heel. This has been their bugaboo. And if they're going to stay alive in the series and win 2 games out of 2 to move on and avoid a first-round exit, which could potentially put Jared Bednar's seat firmly in the hot category, special teams, particularly the power play, is going to be critical. And the final key to victory for me, there's probably a handful of singular players you could point out, but I think for me, it boils down to Cale Makar as one of the best players in the National Hockey League, a 200-foot player, an offensive defenseman, somebody that can have a massive impact on both ends of the ice. He's got to tighten things up a little bit defensively. I think some of those Blackwood goals in Game 5 were due in part to the fact that Cale was out of position and leaving Mackenzie Blackwood out on a little bit of an island. But then offensively, he became the 9th defenseman in NHL history to record 30 goals, and he's been held scoreless from a goal standpoint in this series through 5 games. He's got 2 total points, both of which are assists. Cale has got to find the back of the net, hopefully early, to really set the tone, because we saw him hunting for it in the last couple of games, and it just wasn't going through. He's either just wide or off the post, or he's not getting in good position from the blue line to get good rebounds on the shots for his teammates. And on the defensive side of things, to close it out, the Avalanche have been outscored 4-1 when Cale Makar is on the ice in 5-on-5. When you have a top defensive pairing like Cale Makar and Devon Toews, you cannot afford to be outscored to that level of a disparity when your top pairing is responsible for anchoring things on the defensive side of the ice. All right. We'll see if the Avs can do it. I predict that they will, and we will be heading into the weekend with a tense Game 7 situation. Everyone always says the best 2 words in sports are Game 7, and I think that that's true, but it really sucks when you're on the losing end of it. So we'll see what they can do. I have confidence in them. We'll find out how much confidence our Nuggets analyst Jake Shapiro has in the Denver Nuggets as he joins us live from a marina, it looks like. Jake?
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you catch me pondering? It's Shapchester by the sea over here.
Shapchester by the sea. Jake, as you've gazed out into the partly cloudy, a little bit of morning haze look at the marina there with all those boats that are worth more than you and I, where is your head at when it comes to the Denver Nuggets approaching this Game 6, given how emphatic of a statement they made in Game 5?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of similarities to last year, Richie, right? They have an awesome Game 5 win that happened against Minnesota last year. Nikola Jokic put together one of his best games ever. Jamal Murray, same thing in this year's Game 5 against the Los Angeles Clippers. Afterwards, I talked in the locker room. I was in the locker room both nights, and it felt like the Nuggets were playing with house money, going on the road. Maybe they win, maybe they don't. It doesn't really matter because they're going to come back to Denver with Game 7. This year, they were headstrong, confident. They were locked in. We are going to LA. We are going to win this game. They brought up Game 6 from Minnesota multiple times, so I think their mentality is completely different than it was last year.
We saw the emergence, Jake, of playoff Jamal, and it was definitely the most emphatic showing of Jamal in this postseason thus far. What do you think it is about Game 5 specifically and potentially the carryover into the remainder of the series that seems to resonate so strongly with Jamal? What is it about that portion of a series or a moment that he has historically shown so well?
Yeah, and I believe Nikola Jokic has never lost a Game 5 either. And I think it's because Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray are very cerebral basketball players. That's one of their best assets as players on the floor. They read defenses, they read offenses. They're able to get into the bodies and disrupt the other team's game plans. So when I think about these guys' careers, the longer a series goes, generally the better these two perform. In fact, it was Jamal's first 30-point game in a playoff game since Game 7 last year against Minnesota.
So when you're looking at this approach to Game 6 here, Jake, I think some of the question marks in this series and really throughout a good portion of the season have been Michael Porter Jr. and Russell Westbrook. I thought Russell Westbrook definitely made his presence known. In the coin flip that is the Russell Westbrook experience, I think it came up heads for the Nuggets in Game 5. Do you think it comes up heads again in Game 6, or should we be expecting the yang to come where we had yin last game?
This is an amazing story for Russell Westbrook. He comes home to Los Angeles. He has a chance to knock off the team that cut him about 12 months ago, and a team that a lot of people here said he cost them a playoff series. Like, they blamed Russell Westbrook. So now he has an opportunity to put the Clippers away tonight. What an incredible story. But to answer your question, I think it's probably not. To expect Russell Westbrook to have 19 points or even more than 10 is probably a large outsized expectation for where he's at. He's just returning from injury. Don't forget that. He missed Game 4 with an injury. And I think that the Clippers will be a little bit more focused on him on defense, whereas they were just leaving him during Game 5.
Speaking of injury, Jake, Michael Porter Jr. taken off of the injury report last I checked. How confident are you feeling based on what you've heard about his ability with the shoulder strain and the joint sprain that he had earlier in this series?
So he didn't play Game 5 with any sort of injection. He played through the pain, his natural pain tolerance. I mean, maybe he took ibuprofen, I don't know. But he told me at least he didn't take an injection because he didn't like the swelling that it caused the next day at the needle site. So that's probably a positive for today, a couple days later, that Mike isn't going to be as stiff into this game. I mean, Mike was so stiff, Richie, in Game 5 that he went up for an alley-oop and literally couldn't raise one of his arms. So I think Mike has been spectacular. I think he's been a model for toughness in this series, and I bet that he is going to play quite a bit tonight, and I wouldn't be surprised if he hits a big shot in the third or fourth quarter that ultimately we look back on and say that was the shot of the night.
Wow. Well, if he's hitting a big shot in the third quarter, that usually means he's hit a couple of decent ones in quarters 1 and 2, because he's definitely a momentum player like that. Jake, I asked Will Peterson yesterday as it relates to the Avalanche about one singular thing that the team is going to need to do in order to win Game 6. In the Avalanche cases, that is to avoid elimination. So I'll ask you, in order to close out this series in 6 games and avoid a perilous Game 7, where we know they have the trauma from last season, the Denver Nuggets need to do what?
Out-rebound the Los Angeles Clippers. They were the best rebounding team in the regular season. And right now, on the offensive glass, they are 15th out of 16 teams in the playoffs. Ivica Zubac had 5 rebounds in Game 5. He had not that few rebounds in any games this season. You have to go to last year's playoffs to see a Zubac game with that few rebounds. So if the Nuggets continue to out-rebound the basketball at the level they are against the Clippers, they're going to have a very good shot to close out them tonight.
Physical presence underneath the basket sounds good to me. Jake, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate all the work that you do for DenverSports.com and for us here on the air. Let's see. We got any boats pulling out of the harbor here?
No, but we got one with a crazy name, Richie. The one in the blue over here, it's the Happy Hooker.
You know what? Someday, it is a life goal of mine to own a boat just so that I can name it something completely ridiculous like that. Jake, we will be following everything you're doing out at the arena over at Intuit Dome very closely, and we'll check in with you hopefully again tomorrow if we can before you head back to the Mile High City. Thank you so much, my friend.
See you guys.
Appreciate it. To the rest of you out there, have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for joining me. We've got a ton of action headed tonight. I will be in the building at Ball Arena for Game 6, Avs and Stars, and we will report back everything that we see tomorrow at noon. We'll see you then.